internet, whether on their phones or however. But arguably, if we're told that 500,000 people in Turkana are facing food shortages, that's not been addressed, how are they accessing the presidency?
First of all, obviously we acknowledge that there is a food, there's drought actually in that area.
Perennial drought. Every year we go through this.
Yes, and the question is then one of preparedness. I think that the ministry that is responsible, in fact, has been on the ground. The Permanent Secretary Konchala is in Turkana today. Food supplies have been on the road for a while. We do hope that people are now accessing them. And part of the visit by the relevant Permanent Secretary is to ensure that, in fact, these supplies are getting to citizens in Turkana. Going forward, I think it's a question of how better prepared we must be, because you cannot every year complain about drought and shortages. You are at some point you must say, we understand there will be a drought. We understand it will affect this many people. There must be projections, and good projections at that, and that you are able to, in fact, deliver supplies before it gets dire, rather than waiting for it to get dire, then you start delivering the supplies.
Okay, that all makes sense, but now the question becomes, in terms of how the president communicates with the Kenyan public, he has a news conference, but leaves out an issue of national concern, because there is concern about the situation in Turkana. We're hearing all sorts of reports, people eating dogs, people dying because they don't have any proper nutrition. How, if you're structuring the president's communications, do you leave out something so glaringly obvious?
The news conference yesterday was framed on the question of the railway. And many times when you do big events, you want the focus to be kept where it is. So we kept the focus on the railway. Now, it might well be that, in fact, we should have included Turkana. And maybe it is one thing that we, in fact, should have done. However, that said, we also knew at that point that the Ministry of Devolution, which deals with the disaster relief, was moving supplies, and they would be making statements today to that effect. So when, in fact, they do, they should be able to clear the air about where we are in terms of delivering drought relief to the suffering people of Turkana.
Okay. But if some of those cabinet secretaries, if you ask them to come to any, or even have a press conference, the cabinet secretaries who have never said anything, if you ask them to come because there is a disaster there, if you ask them to come to Cheche or to anything, they will not come. How do we make them come and account, to be held accountable?
I think accountability is the reason we are going to have the quarterly briefings to the media by cabinet secretaries. Because I think the questions you raise, I think other Kenyans out there raise them, that they want to see their cabinet secretaries accounting for the work in their departments. And we do hope that this can be done. I think most of them are able to come anytime to a show like this one. And I think that if you are having difficulty...
Many have refused to come.
I think if you have a difficulty, please contact me, because we would have that discussion and see how to enable that go forward.
Thank you, Manoah. But still, going back to the concerns, you framed the news conference yesterday on the standard gauge railway. What about the concern about insecurity?
I think the president has used almost every opportunity he has got to speak about insecurity. So it's in the public domain that we're using technology more to tackle insecurity. We have got, the president launched a whole fleet of new vehicles. I think there are 1,200 late last year to help keep police mobile. I think we are getting new equipment to deal with this problem. We have used every opportunity to deal with insecurity, for the president to deal with insecurity, and it's one of his thoughts when he wakes up. It's one of his thoughts when he goes to sleep. It is something the president is almost obsessed with.
Okay. I'll reframe the question because obviously we know what happened last September. We had the terror attack on the Westgate Mall. There have been reports in the newspapers about the joint parliamentary investigations into what took place, what could have been done, what could have been avoided. And we hear, although it's not confirmed, that the attacks, warnings were given, no action was taken. But the challenge in Kenya, not just when it comes to insecurity, but in other matters, is accountability, which is the word that you have used. And so there are also questions about why we're not seeing any accountability when it comes to insecurity.
I think in terms of Westgate, there have been several investigations. There's a forensic investigation being conducted by the multi-security agencies, and it involved foreign agents as well. In terms of the local parliamentary process, there is that process, and we understand the report is ready. We haven't seen that report yet. So I think in terms of how the president should act, the president has always said that he wants to see the forensics report when it's done, and he would like to see the parliamentary report when it's done, so that it gives direction in terms of the next steps. Often I'm reminded that the president promised a commission of inquiry, yes, and that he has not named that inquiry yet. But I think on the president's part, he does need to see whether what the others say, what the forensics investigators have said, and what Parliament comes up with, before he then takes a decision on how to move forward. Because all that allows him a greater room to demand accountability.
Okay. Go ahead.
What access do you have? Because I'm asking this because I've seen government spokesman or presidential spokesman being contradicted, or saying something and something else up. What access do you have?
Well, this spokesperson will not be contradicted because he has full access. I have access to the president, to the deputy president, and to cabinet secretaries. I do not say anything that I have not consulted with them to make sure that what I say, in fact, reflects government.
What's your working relationship like in terms of President Uhuru Kenyatta's style? Because you would be one of the people who works closest to him. So how would you describe him as a boss?
Well, it's always a difficult question to ask a staff member of a boss. But this president is bright. This president listens. This president takes time to reflect on things. This president clearly thinks about what his agenda is to deliver growth, to improve lives of people. So he is really a president that listens, a president that also is very decisive once he decides on what course of action to take. I think he makes his own mind. It's one of I think we are in one of those countries where the president it's very difficult to box him into a corner and say he must do this. He doesn't have to do that. He does not fall easily, should I say, to interest groups. As he was saying yesterday, his only interest is the welfare of the Kenyan people. If you have anything to tell him, he will be open to listen and then make up his own mind about how he should move forward. I think that working with him is truly one of those glorious things that I have had.
Okay. What sort of hours does he work?
Long hours, I would say. He would 12-hour days are normal at State House. There are times that it will be longer. If we have a national crisis, for instance, then we are talking about 18-hour days in the case of Westgate.
Okay. So you've told us, going back to Mutegi's question about your access, and you've given us an agenda for the rest of the year in terms of how you intend to manage communications with the executive. But what exactly have you achieved in the time that you have been presidential spokesperson beyond getting to understand your bosses, the people you serve?
I think the main job for someone like me is what amount of access have you made available for your principals to tell their story. And we think that relative progress has been made in that direction. The President was having a news conference yesterday. The Deputy President was here on Cheche not too long ago. Quite a number of Cabinet Secretaries are holding their own briefings, even though Mutegi here still believes there are quite a few who are reticent about not
Is that
doing it.
attributable to you or to those who feel the need to communicate directly with the public?
I think that's attributable to the building stones we are making. It's the message going through that the message needs to get across, and therefore the messengers need to be out there beating the drums. If the messengers are not beating the drums, no sound will come out. And I think that's part of the principle going out there. I think there is a great deal of question about government websites, for instance, which are not necessarily the model ones you want to see. And we've started work on that as well. So if I came back here, say 3 to 6 months from now, we probably will have government websites that are model sites.
Okay. Well, one of the things that you did was to relabel or introduce this presidential strategic communications idea, strategic communications unit, which you had. And under that, we also have a digital unit?
Yes.
What purpose does it serve? Because there is a perception that these are political attack dogs.
I think that you have to go back to what we inherited, which was primarily a news agency for the presidency.
Presidential Press Service.
Yeah, their work was primarily reactive. President does, you report, number one. Secondly, they did not have a mandate beyond the president. Which changed with this office. So if you do have our media relations team will be talking to other government departments daily to see what's happening and what plans are there in relation to what's happening currently, as well as an outlook type thing. The president's speeches will the pulling together of ideas and discussing them with the president is done internally now, as well as the whole wriggle of the public relations element, which this is about. Now, specifically, the digital team's work is to get not just our sites, but also government department, ministerial websites up and running. That's part of the work they're doing. They are present on Twitter, they are present on Facebook and other areas in the social sphere. Their work is not to be attack dogs, and I do not think, in fact, that I have seen any element in that of that in this current team. It may well be that the perception is there, and we can't deny it. But is it reality? No, it isn't.
Look, a few weeks ago, one of your colleagues wrote articles in newspapers, which was found rather strange. Was that part of the job?
I think it's prudent to say that if we are where we are, we try not to be the subject of news. We serve the subject, and as much as possible we shy away from turning ourselves into the news subject. And I think that there have been many questions raised about those articles, not because of the articles themselves, but because of the authorship of those articles. And I think it's one of those things that in time officers will look at and think maybe they did not do the right thing at the time.
Okay.
So what are you saying? That it was wrong, that he probably was reprimanded? What's the meaning
I
of what
can
you
certainly say it was wrong. It's not the type of thing you do if you in the president's office, because if you have any issues, you directly talk to the president about them, and it's one. So I would say yes, it was wrong.
What action was taken as a consequence?
And there have been discussions about how you behave in the president's office.
You have said
Discussion,
that
just a minute, but what action was taken as a result of that? Because clearly that was a breach. You're being careful in your language, but that was a clear breach.
Yes, there is always a process. So I think we're going through the processes.
Right.
You
we have to
said
take a break now, Mutegi. Please hold the thought. This is Cheche, live on Citizen TV. Presidential spokesman Manoah Esipisu is our guest this morning. If you've got any thoughts and questions for him, do SMS us. The number is 22422. You can also tweet us on @Cheche_TV.